What does Yankees-Red Sox rivalry mean to you, sir?
I'll tell you right now, it's so much better when both teams are good. You know, it's not as fun, obviously, when one team's good, the other team's not. The other team's trying to rebuild. Yankees got good last 6 weeks of the season, and I think they turned into a really powerhouse and a lot quicker than they thought these young guys would be. So now the rivalry, I think, is getting back kind of what we've wanted to see over the last few years because it lost a little mojo. And now you're looking at two teams that are probably going to win 100-plus games in that East.
Well, when you were playing with the Red Sox, Kevin, it was the situation where both teams were good and playing for quite a bit. When it was time, and look, you're professionals. You get paid a nice chunk of change to play the sport, and it's great that you put on a uniform every day, which it's a dream of every kid to do something like that. But when it all comes down to it, did you have a dislike for the Yankees? Was there a different sense in the locker room, in the clubhouse when you were getting set to take on the Yankees, Kevin?
Yeah, you know what, it's a great question because as a player, the cities, the media, the ownership, they battle, right? But there's also a respect when you go in between the lines and when you had a chance to, play and compete against a Derek Jeter, and Jason Giambi and Roger Clemens and Mike Mussina and all this stuff and Bernie and Jorge. There was a respect when you crossed lines, but it seemed like we were in some kind of turmoil every single time we played. It was like the Super Bowl of baseball. And in that in 03, 04, and 05, the rivalry was it was heated. It was good. We were so opposite, to the Yankees. We were shaved heads with Fu Mans and beards and scrungy and, Johnny Damon with the long hair, where the Yankees were clean cut. They were tall and they were rich and they were good looking. We were bad bodies. So it was just one of those things. We were kind of like we played that underdog role, even though we had your Manny Ramirez's and Poppy turned into Poppy and your Kurt Schilling. But it was just more of a rugged type, city and team in Boston than the New York Yankees, who've had 26, pennants at that time. And I always said this wasn't a rivalry. This was a slaughter. So we have to win one to make this a rivalry. And obviously in 04, it came.
So what was I guess the boiling point while you were with the team with the Yankees? I can pretty much guess it, but what was the biggest boiling point, Kevin?
You know what? I think the game, we had rain the entire day and night before, and they walked the field in Fenway and wanted to basically cancel it to kind of get the rotation going. I think they wanted, when I say they, I think ownership at that time upstairs, whoever makes the call was like, listen, we'll have Pedro and Schilling or however they wanted to set it up in 04. But we had Bronson Royal starting that night, and we went into the, Frank Cohen's locker room and said, basically, there's like 8 of us said, no, we want to play. We're playing tonight. And even though it didn't match up perfect, and, when you play the Red Sox and Yankees, you always want the aces. They wanted Mussina and Clemens and the whole shebang going, and we always wanted, our top 3 rotation guys. But we had so much confidence in Bronson Royal. He's such an underrated starter for us. But we went out there, and that was the night that the A-Rod and the Veritek fight happened. He hits him with a breaking ball, and then that happened. And then Billy Millar, ended up, hitting a home run, a 3-run home run against Mariano Rivera. And we ended up winning the game that night. And it was a huge game because we were stuttering around 400 or 500. But I said we won, 2 games that day. We won the fight and we won the game. But it just was our turning point, I think, when we kind of just like it put us on the map like, let's roll, And sometimes bench clearing brawls are kind of part of baseball, and a lot of talking and chit-chatting. But it also can bring a team together, and I think that was the one when Alex kind of looked at Bronson after getting hit by a breaking ball. It was like, oh, no, nah. And that's, obviously the Veritek thing, and we had a nice brawl.
Well, you did. Honestly, I thought you'd go Pedro and Zimmer, Kevin. I mean, that was pretty big, too.
Funny? No? That was 03 now, and that was Pedro. That was obviously a high. I don't know if it was inside. It was just off the plate high, and Manny Ramirez and Clemens did their barking. Well, the Don Zimmer thing, Pedro Martinez was hated by the Yankees, right? I mean, he threw up and in. He was good, and it was a lot of years of dominating that team. They obviously didn't like it, but Don Zimmer came flying across the field, and Pedro Martinez and Chris Crenny, who was our trainer, they were just kind of walking out of the dugout, and Don charged Pedro. And to be honest with you, when it first happened, everybody was just like, "What? How do you throw an old man down?" And that's Don Zimmer, and everybody loves Don Zimmer. But you can understand, he kind of stepped aside and kind of just pushed him aside, pushed him down, however you want to say it, in a situation that really wasn't. Pedro wasn't even involved in that.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how raw it is still 15 years later, too, Kevin. And A-Rod's in the booth on Sunday night for ESPN. I mean, it's crazy, man. But it's still raw. It really is on both sides, Kevin.
It was such honest to God, it feels like it's yesterday. And like you said, you're looking at 15 years ago. But those rivalries, those games, I mean, I still think of the excitement in the cities, in the towns. And we would go to lunch in New York, and fans are flipping us off and yelling at us, and it was awesome. And the buses, we drive to the Bronx in the buses, and they knew it was the Red Sox team bus, and there was fingers going up. You loved it. When you were in that house in the old Yankee Stadium, there wasn't nice things said. And I'm going to tell you right now, in Fenway Park, you're warming up in that bullpen. There's not nice things said if you're wearing pinstripes and in that gray uniform. So it's kind of what makes a rivalry nice, is the fans get into it, and there's a little bit of anger there.
Again, I grew up on this stuff. I grew up on Bucky Dent. I grew up on when Zimmer was the manager of the Red Sox, right? I grew up on Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson fighting in the dugout in Fenway Park. I grew up on Carlton Fisk and Piniella going at it. I grew up on this stuff, and I've got a 9-7 at home. I kind of like to show that stuff to him, too, Kevin.
It's awesome.
I kind of want to show it to him.
It's the way and it's hard because Chris Rose gets on me. These unwritten rules. I don't understand how it's okay to throw up and then I don't know. We can have more fun in baseball. I go, Chris, you can do whatever you want on the baseball field. You can. You have the right to do a backflip after you hit a home run. You want to hit backwards. There's just repercussions for your actions. Period. End of story. So there's a way to play the game. There's an unwritten rule to play the game. You want spikes high, you might get drilled. You'll pimp a home run, you might get drilled, you might not. It just depends on what goes on. There was just always that edge when our rivalry was there, It was just that edge. It was just a little edge. You never knew what Trot Nixon was going to do or Roger Clemens was going to do or Pedro Martinez was going to do. It just was there. And then, it's nice to see there's a little bit of an edge somewhere in this rivalry because it's been very friendly and huggy and sweet, and everybody's just, good old vanilla guys. And now we're okay. We both got 50+ wins, and we both are the powerhouses of the big leagues along with the Astros, and let's roll.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.